The conflict between the United Democratic Front and Inkatha Freedom Party was marked by intense political violence and turmoil. The UDF, formed in 1983, was a response to the rise of Inkatha's dominance in the region, particularly in Natal and Zululand. The lifting of the state of emergency in 1986 intensified political violence and vigilante activities, leading to a high number of eliminations and casualties. The conflict was characterized by clan faction fights and the mobilization of local leadership to take arms against each other. The violence had a profound impact on families and intergenerational relationships, making it difficult to disentangle the political struggle from the violent nature of the struggle against apartheid.
Supporters were burnt down in the Zulu rampage.
Our sheikhs are burning here. What is the use of talking? And when they come back in the afternoon, there's going to be hell here.
The Zulus, more than 40,000 of them, armed with traditional weapons, converged on Pretoria, South Africa's seat of government. Their demand, unlikely to be met, is for a Zulu state within the new South Africa.
Student activist Ben Langa was eliminated by MK members in Edendale, Pietermaritzburg in June 1984 on suspicion of being a police informer. Mr. Clarence Lakipai and Mr. Mashayi Nisipoxulu were sentenced to death for the elimination. They were executed on 7 September 1986. Pai's mother told a commission hearing in Durban in 1997 that after her son's execution, she received death threats and fled her home.
The dark cloud which presided over the reign of apartheid led to innocent figures who resisted the regime dying. Benjamin Langa was one of the individuals who did not escape the false accusing finger, which labeled him as an informer to agents of the apartheid regime. But a revelation during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearing by a former Umkhonto weSizwe member, George Martins, cleared him.
Well, as the ANC has said, that the security police managed to get rid of 3 valuable ANC cadres without firing a single shot. They got the 2 young people to kill Ben Langa and then tried them, convicted them and executed them for that.
The assassination of Durban attorney Mrs. Victoria Mxenge marked a pivotal point in the further division of Inkatha in the UDF. After the event, conflict quickly spread to other townships around Durban, Pietermaritzburg and surrounding areas. The commission heard that, in the months leading up to Mrs. Mxenge's death, the security forces had made a public show of cracking down on UDF-aligned activists in an attempt to create the impression that the UDF was the main force behind the political violence in the province. The security forces were often seen to be standing by and refusing to intervene in clashes between the UDF and Inkatha supporters. In other reports, the police were alleged to be actively supporting Inkatha in the conflict. The conflict spread also to the factory floor. After the strike and elimination of COSATU members in Mpophomeni in 1986, local conflict and violence in and around Pietermaritzburg intensified dramatically. By the early 1990s, it was being referred to as the Midlands War. At the time of her death, Victoria Mxenge was an executive member of the UDF. To date, there have been no persecutions in connections with her elimination. The commission received submissions from 2 independent sources, both named a former security branch operative, Mr. Bongani Malinga, as Mxenge's assassin. According to the NC's second submission to the commission, Mr. Marvin Sifako, alias Bongani Raymond Malinga, from Hillcrest, Durban, was recruited by the security branch. His handler was Brigadier Peter Swanepoel. Malinga allegedly confessed to the NC that he had eliminated at least 5 people, including Miss Victoria Mxenge. Malinga also allegedly participated in the attack on the memorial service for Victoria Mxenge. Malinga's case was heard by the NC's People's Tribunal in Lusaka on 7 May 1990. In addition to the eliminations, He was found guilty of a number of other offences, including collaborating with the enemy to infiltrate the ANC with the intention of eliminating MK Chief of Staff Chris Hani and MK Commander Joe Modise. A former ANC member and later head of the Returned Exiles Committee, Mr. Patrick Mncedisi Dlongwane, told the commission that while he was detained at the NC's Quadro camp, he had shared a cell with one Bongani Malinga, who claimed he had assassinated Victoria Mxenge. According to Dlongwane, Malinga was eliminated by ANC members in 1991. A memorial service for Victoria Mxenge was held in the Umlazi Cinema on 8 August 1985. There was a large contingent of police and soldiers outside the cinema. During the service, hundreds of men, armed with assekais, knobkiris, and firearms, burst into the cinema and began stabbing and shooting randomly. Terrified mourners jumped over the cinema balcony to escape the attackers. Witnesses alleged that the attackers included Inkatha vigilantes recruited from the adjacent Shek settlements and from Lindelani, north of Durban. Soldiers and police were allegedly present but took no action to prevent the attack. 17 people were eliminated in the incident. David Spononokasa, chairperson of the Umlazi Residents Association, had led the memorial service. He told the commission at the Durban hearing that Inkatha and KLA members Winnington Sabelo and Thomas Shabalala led the attackers, who stabbed and fired on the mourners. The organization Inkatha did not sanction or rebuke those involved and did not disassociate itself from the violence. Victoria Mxenge's funeral was held in King Williamstown in the Eastern Cape on 12 August 1985. A few days later, David Gasa's home was attacked and burnt. A mass funeral for the people killed in the Umlazi cinema attack was held on 23 October 1985. That same day, a busload of Inkatha supporters attacked Gasa's home a second time. The attackers were allegedly led by Mr. Winnington Sabelo. Gasa was out at the time of the attack, but his wife and mother-in-law were home. The attack resulted in the elimination of his mother-in-law. 1 week later, 6 months later, his wife developed hypertension and passed away. Mr. Josiah Dlamini was the owner of the Umlazi Cinema and made it available for the memorial service. His son, Jacob, was subsequently eliminated by Inkatha members in Lindelani. Josiah Dlamini told the commission, Jacob was at the Lindelani station. He was about to take the taxi home. As he was still at the station, he saw Inkatha Freedom Party. He was asked as to what he was waiting for, and they started assaulting him at that point. He tried to plead with them, and he told them that his father was very well known. He mentioned my name. That's when they decided they should kill him, because they said I had organized a night vigil for Mrs. Mxenge. He stayed for 4 days at the hospital, and thereafter he died. He had been assaulted, and he had injuries all over his body. Large-scale violence erupted in Umlazi after Mxenge's elimination. A State Security Council document compiled in March 1989 described the elimination of Victoria Mxenge as the turning point in the conflict in Natal and KwaZulu. The murder of Victoria Mxenge, a radical lawyer from Umlazi, on 1 August 1985, for which the UDF blamed Inkatha and the SEP, was the biggest contributory factor to the violent conflict between the UDF and Inkatha, especially in the Durban area. Large-scale unrest continued until March 1986, and even the state of emergency could not inhibit the sporadic violent incidents. From January 1987, the situation systematically deteriorated, and the focal point of the unrest, especially since September 1987, moved to the Pietermaritzburg area. 50 people were eliminated over 3 days in the battle between Inkatha Freedom Party and the United Democratic Front supporters in Natal, following the release of Mandela on 11 February 1990. The role of the ANC in this conflict is difficult to determine. On the one hand, Many of the conflicts were local battles over resources, control, and patronage of Inkatha officials who controlled, amongst other things, local government, land access, education and housing in KwaZulu. On the other, the ANC had, from the time of severing its ties between the two organizations, engaged in propaganda which encourages supporters to see Inkatha as the enemy. While the ANC denied that its armed operatives had ever considered political leaders or members of Inkatha to be legitimate targets, Mr. Joel Nechitenze of the ANC told the recall hearing of the commission that, from time to time, there were individuals in these structures, be it in the community councils or in the Bantustan structures, who behaved in such a manner within communities that they defined themselves as targets to those communities. And amongst those communities, you would from time to time find MK cadres who would have responded to such attacks and provocation. There were numerous armed attacks on Inkatha members in the late 1980s, involving hand grenades and automatic rifles. The ANC explained that a plan by an MK unit to assassinate Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi was stopped by MK commanders. However, many lower-profile Inkatha leaders were eliminated. The ANC was asked specifically to respond to documents stating that correspondents to Tamizulu, at the time head of MK operations in Natal, emphasized the need to infiltrate smaller groups to deal with Inkatha warlords from December 1987 onwards. Mr. Joe Modise, head of MK, responded that Tamizulu would have had the latitude to act in response to such requests, but that such a request had not been discussed in MK headquarters. Mr. Matthews Posa, who was a member of the MK command in Mozambique at the time, denied that such a matter had ever been discussed. As a result of public statements by Chief Buthelezi that his party would not cooperate with the commission was unable to access any significant number of statements from Inkatha Freedom Party members and supporters who were victims of human rights violations. The commission went to extensive lengths to persuade the IFP to participate in its work, but with limited success. In late 1997, shortly before the cut-off date for making of victim statements, KwaZulu-Natal Premier Ben Ngubane issued a public statement encouraging IFP members who had been victims of violations to make statements to the commission so they could qualify for financial reparations. This resulted in a small number of IFP victims coming forward. In the submission it made to the commission, the IFP said that differences between Inkatha and the ANC proved irreconcilable at the 1979 meeting in London. From then onwards, said Mr. Frank Dlalose, Inkatha was singled out as an enemy because it refused to crook the knee to the ANC or accept its strategy of armed struggle and the destruction of the South African economy. Relations between the ANC and Inkatha deteriorated rapidly after the London meeting. Initially, the conflict took a form of a war of words. The ANC embarked upon a propaganda onslaught against Chief Buthelezi and Inkatha. UDF supporters on the ground became increasingly antagonistic towards Inkatha, describing its leadership, particularly Chief Buthelezi, variously as a sellout and a puppet of Pretoria. Former senior IFP official, Mr. Daluxolo Luthuli, told the commission that Zulu traditional leaders were by this time coming under increasing attack by the ANC. Comrades were attacking, murdering, and destroying the homes of councillors, indunas, and chiefs. This was a strategy of the ANC and was even announced on Radio Freedom. The IFP provided the commission with a substantial volume of information from the propaganda apparatus of the ANC at this time, illustrating the extent to which the IFP became the focal point for opposition to the system. When in late 1985, Chief Buthelezi was alerted to the alleged MK plans to assassinate him, he turned to the state security apparatus for support. Buthelezi's requests included the training and deployment of a VIP guard unit, an intelligence structure, a KwaZulu army, the authority to issue firearm licenses, and a paramilitary force. The South African Defence Force viewed the question of covert assistance to Inkatha as mutually beneficial. It saw Inkatha playing a central role in its strategic response to the total onslaught by the liberation and resistance movements. In his amnesty application, Taluxolo Luthuli confirmed that the AFP felt that the only course open to it was to mobilize a paramilitary capacity. Militant youth who were affiliated to the UDF were very active in black areas. Through violence and intimidation, they were forcing people to support them in their efforts to make the country ungovernable. People who did not support the comrades were abused in many ways by these comrades. People's courts were held, and the sentences which were given out by the youngsters were often inhumane and barbaric. People were commonly sentenced to hundreds of lashes, forced to parade naked through the townships, and eliminated by necklacing. One of the reasons put forward for this violence is that pro-government forces, as well as members of the South African security establishment, wish to destabilize and totally disrupt the negotiations between the African National Congress and other political formations and the apartheid regime. A further reason was that the UDF was growing in popularity in Natal, which was traditionally considered an Inkatha stronghold. The release of Nelson Mandela on 11 February 1990 intensified the violence. It was also during this period that rumors of a third force emerged, and much of the instability and political violence of this period was blamed on these elements.
At the last amnesty hearing in Durban, a policeman who was also an IFP supporter applied for amnesty. Hendrik Steyn is serving an 18-year sentence for his involvement in the murders of 2 ANC members who were also members of a gang. The incident happened on the 14th of August 1992 at Kwambonambi near Ipmangeni. When Steyn arrived at work at 7 o'clock in the morning, he and 4 other policemen were sent to the scene of a shooting incident at Sekula Reserve where the gang operated. Policemen were killed during the shooting. On the way there, Steyn encountered another police vehicle with 2 policemen, 2 Defence Force members and the 2 injured gang members on the back of the bakkie.
One of these Defence Force people, who later became known to me during the court case as a Mr. Law, shouted to us and confirmed that they had just come from the area where the shooting incident had taken place, and he also said, "Here are the bloody dogs that killed the policeman." In the back of the bakkie there were 2 black people. I immediately recognized the one as Samuel Mashele, the leader of the gang who had committed acts of terror in that area. The other person was unknown to me, but was identified by Mr. Law as one Michael Mtetwa. I noticed that both of these people were injured and covered in blood. I further was told that they were on their way to Zwelazan Hospital.
Steyn was worried that the 2 gang members would escape from custody, as had happened in the past, and so would never be brought to justice.
I told the Defence Force people that they should shoot, and if there was any queries about the deaths, they should just say that they had died on their way to hospital, that they had died from the wounds sustained earlier during the shooting.